Hello, welcome to my lecture, Metafood Physics. My lecture is organized into 4 parts. Part 1, Metafood Physics and Consciousness. Part 2, Life Cycle and Experiences. Part 3, Consciousness Approaches to Food Science. And Part 4, Application of Consciousness theory to food taste. Today's talk is the part 1 covering Introduction to Metafood Physics as a new academic paradigm of food science. Decision making, review of consciousness, consciousness theories, consciousness realities, formation and nature of self. The primary function of food is to provide nourishment furnished by nutrients and to enhance human health and happiness. Food scientists want to predict the outcome of the food consumption in the context of dual goals. Unfortunately, food scientist is not likely to receptive the notions of dualism because mind is invisible and subjective experiences is inconsistency. But the point is that the satisfaction is subjective experience rather than objectively measurable physical food. We are living with so many experiences that we can hardly count its numbers and types. Among them, a typical type of experience is food taste. For instance, many agree that apple is sweet with acid flavor, but the experiences of individuals are different. One has happy memories, but another unpleasant experience. It is the nature of subjective experiences what I am going to talk about in this series of lectures. Because of this subjective experience, we encounter many mystic phenomena and problems with regard to food and human behaviors. For instance, a boiling chicken soup served at boiling temperature in hot midsummer at Korean restaurants. Guest enjoys the soup, saying eating this way is so cool. It reveals that subjective perception is quite different from objective sensing. Chinese, Mexican, and Italian restaurants in 5-star hotels spend a sizable portion of their budgets in decorating dining rooms in traditional native styles. Nevertheless, the decoration is nothing to do with food in scientific material sense. It suggests that without understanding subjective experience, there is no way to explain these mystic behaviors. As self-regulation in dietary life becomes increasingly important, some food scientists, including sensory science fields, cooperate with psychologists, but they may realize that it is far beyond the material evidences and too abstract, including definition of minds, way of perception, and so forth. From the perspective of food scientists, I have proposed a new academic field, Metafood Physics, that encompasses food and its perception process ranging from food consumptions to conscious responses and food-related human behavior. This figure explains the types of processing and associated fields that constitutes metafood physics. Metafood physics aims to resolve the reason why these things happen and to provide a fundamental and theoretical basis for consciousness approaches to food science. Metafood physics arises from a consciousness approaches centered on the subjective experiences associated with food-related behaviors. Thus, it is necessary to understand the fundamental knowledge regarding consciousness and the self as the fundamental gateway to subjective experience. Now, we have to know what the consciousness is. Consciousness is defined differently in various fields. The mind in general, awareness in the medical sector, spirits in religions, and so on. As noticed, terms and contents are not consistent and make us confused and difficult to understand its natures. From invisible and non-mass nature of the consciousness, it is not easy to reject and choose exclusively one out of many others, because each field has enough reason of the definition for the sake of academic and application fields. In this connection, food scientists have a right to develop a consciousness theory to meet our academic goal, although consciousness has an invisible and a non-sensible nature. Visibility and invisibility have been important criteria in defining whether something is true or false in the past, but nowadays it is not so. The various visible and invisible electromagnetic waves are classified into the unified units defined by wavelengths of frequency, Hertz. In this line, I categorized the consciousness into layers and levels with an numerical hierarchy as presented with different colors. As illustrated in this figure, single cells belong to first consciousness layer. In contrast, human belongs to higher consciousness layer ranging from 5 to 8 consciousness layer, and human beings are classified into many different levels in terms of capability. Let's review how the modern sciences describe consciousness ranging from theoretical fields such as physics, chemistry, astrophysics, and to applied sciences including biology, information processing, and social fields. I will introduce two cases out of many. In quantum physics, Schrödinger established the dualistic nature of mass using wave function, which leads to the notion of dualism between objectivity and subjectivities. In biology sector, many say the consciousness comes from brain, but we can raise a serious question as to whether the brain is sufficient to be crucial for vitality of living being. There are many living beings having no brain, such as microorganisms, plants, and animals, including jellyfishes. Brain seems to control our bodies, but it is not. In this sense, brain seems to control my activities, such as decision-making at a glance, but it is also controlled by something else behind my awareness, and thus consciousness is responsible. We live by making decisions and choosing the best option among others in a given context. Is there any ubiquitous law regarding making the best choice or decision-making? I attempted to generalize the rule of choice from 4 different cases: atom, living cell, social structure, and software programming. Carbon is a backbone element for any organic substances. Types of hydrocarbon compounds is determined by the way of binding, and the type of living being is also determined by the type of salt, adenines, cytosine, guanine, and thymines. In computer programming, we use branching methods, choosing the best one out of 3 options. When we are driving by passing cross-section, we have to choose one way out of other 3 ways. I defined them either a 3-way branching transfer, abbreviated by 3WBT in Donner's aspects, or 3-way branching perception, abbreviated by 3WBP in receptors aspects. In every moment, our sensory organs interfaces many external things and perceive them. I proposed 3-way branching perception mechanism during the human cognition process as described in these figures. We perceived it with 1 out of 3 options: good, bad, and neutral. When the stimuli are perceived through 3 transformation steps, the perception will be 1 out of 3 options: good feelings or bad feelings, neutral. And the perceived memories are stored in 3-way branching perception network as shown here. I presented the concepts in 2000 at IU Forst conference. Similar model was published by Lamme in 2004. Now, I will talk about the main subject of this lecture, which includes scientific evidence supporting the consciousness theories, premises for the hypotheses of the theory, structure of the consciousness reality, and self. I made 10 premises on the basis of scientific evidence found in various science fields. First, the material world is empty and interlinked in terms of the coherence force. It's from quantum physics. Second, empty space of the universe is filled with invisible dark matter and dark energy. It's from astrophysics. Third, living material is composed of electrons and protons by the option of bindings. is from chemistry. Fourth, living beings developed from a cell that has a membrane or an enclosure is from biology. Fifth, living beings have a hierarchical information processing system for the self is from biology. The rest of them are as shown in this slide. The first question regarding consciousness is what does it look like? Is it square or sphere? I hypothesized that the consciousness is shaped as a sphere like Earth because every being from atom to huge planets are round the sphere. In the egg of insects, round-shaped nucleus exists, and we are living on round Earth, which is also orbiting around the sun. As a child takes after a parent's, consciousness may be sphere. If we cut out a small part out of the consciousness sphere, the consciousness piece has a multiple layered structure composed of consciousness messy layers, abbreviated by CML. The smallest one at the bottom and the largest at the top, and levels in a given layers as shown in figure B. The bottom figure shows the consciousness mesh layers having different mesh sizes. The next question is what is consciousness mesh is made of. It is made of consciousness fiber abbreviated as CF, which has an identical meaning to thought lines connecting between two consciousness events. For instance, when we encounter an emotional event, we are used to say an expression of touching. That means a connecting to my minds. Thus, consciousness mesh is weaved by consciousness fibers, CFs. When two people talk face-to-face, there will be a communication line called a CF. If people's debates regarding an issue, they reach to an agreement at an appropriate points of compromise, as marked by yes in bottom figure. It is consciousness node. What is the force keeping consciousness mesh in place? It is coherent force abbreviated by C-corp, defined by a force acting on and around the consciousness mesh system. When two consciousness fibers are agreeable, this coherent force makes them combine at a certain point, forming a tied node called CF node, and reject each other if not agreeable. The consciousness fiber node serves to combine consciousness fibers to build the consciousness mesh and link layer after layer and keeps CMLs in their relevant positions. Suppose several peoples are debating at discussion tables. Many consciousness fibers form CML, composed of many units, the CM abbreviated by UCM, shown with shaded plane in these figures. The blue rectangular plane is the one level of CML. Now, I will talk about the formation of consciousness realities as seen in liquids or soft jelly. Any internal or external events impact the consciousness slab, and the absorbed force spreads across the entire region, accompanied by up and down motion, by which waves are generated. The waves continuously splits off the mesh into small pieces, defined by CF fragments, abbreviated by CF flags, and dust of CF, abbreviated by CF dust. The structural alteration affects the inner structure of the CM slab in terms of size and void space of the multiple CML. The deformation results the reduction of aperture size of UCM or void space between CMLs and provides a more denser or favorable rooms for CF flags to be trapped inside the mesh than that of original UCM. The retained consciousness fiber fragments aggregate each other to make a sizable consciousness aggregates on a particular consciousness mesh layers. The consciousness aggregates bind with nearby CAs to grow to a CA cluster, CAC. The CAC is the basic units of any beings, including material substance in this universe. This figure shows the formation of CACs in CM system, some in one CML as shown in figure A and C, some across multiple CMLs as shown in figure B and D. The small CAC will be related to the small living beings, such as microorganisms. The larger CACs will be larger living beings. At here, the position and the number of relevant CML of CAC affects the capability of the CAC. The higher the greater capability. The greater in the number of MCML, the better quality in terms of intelligence. The biggest CAC has the highest potential and acts as the most important self, as an observer out of many other observed beings. I will talk about the nature of self, dualism between the observer and observed, and life cycle of self in brief. Self has a dynamic nature to take tracks one out of 3 cycles at CAC states. According to the association with material, CAC is converted to either CACM, the mass-bound states, or CACP, the non-mass-bound states, which has only potential. The roots for CAC are 3 cycles as presented with different color circles. Cycle 1 with blue colors for CAC, green for CACP, cycle 2, orange for CACM, cycle 3, respectively. The CAC has 2 states, growing and decaying states as tagged by CAC plus and CAC minus, respectively. The details will be covered in the next lecture. Let me summarize this lecture Universe is composed of a consciousness mesh wherein several consciousness realities are constructed. They are CF, CF frag, CF dust, CA, and CAC. CAC is an intellectual reality constructed in the CM system and accounts for the self. The CF thus serves as the basis for non-living being or material substance. CAC serves as the basis for living beings or the origins of life. CAC has two states, the mass-bound states, CACM, and the non-mass-bound potential form, CACP. Next lecture, part 2, will cover the type of life cycle, the mass-bound self, CACM, non-mass-bound self, CACP, in details. The type of experience, the configuration of cycles, and mind and body issues. For further information, you can read the books Metaphor Physics. Thank you for your attention.